It's 5 Saturday morning. Thanks to daylight saving time, the sun won't be up for another couple of hours. I am very definitely not a morning person. I am not happy about being awake at this ungodly hour. The special roast coffee I've just begun sipping is doing its best to make me a bit more human, not an enviable task. I am vaguely aware the shower has shut off as my foggy brain begins to replay the events of the previous evening. My lips curl into a smile as I relive that exquisite moment of connection with my wife. In my mind, I can clearly hear her as she calls my name. The memory is so vivid, for an instant, I think I'm dreaming. Babe, can you pour me one of those? My eyes pop open as her voice forces me back to reality. My daydream fades away, and once again I'm reminded, reality sucks. But not in this case. The vision before me is quite lovely. My new bride has just walked out of the bathroom in her short red silk robe. She has both hands above her head, doing that magical thing women do when they wrap their hair up in a towel. Raising her arms has caused her robe to ride up and display most of her trim, muscular thighs. She wears no makeup, she seldom ever does, and still I am captivated by her natural beauty. Amy, I know you have to hurry, so here, take my coffee and I'll go get another cup while you get your scrubs on. Oh hey, do you want to take the leftovers for your lunch? Yes, that would be way better than anything they'll have in the cafeteria, thanks John. As Amy stands at the kitchen counter, refilling her coffee cup, she begins to apologize for the unwanted, abrupt change to our Saturday morning plans. I cut her off. Amy, honey, I understand. Margaret is sick, and you have to be there. How many surgeries are scheduled for today? I asked. 3, I think. So I should be back home by 4 o'clock, and I can't wait to make it up to you this evening. John, as great as last night was, I was so looking forward to spending a few hours in bed with you this morning. Now I have to dash off to the hospital while I'm still feeling frustrated as heck. Oh, shoot. Should I be worried about sending my beautiful bride off to spend the day with a bunch of godlike alpha male doctors? I asked. Godlike alpha males? Hell, all those jerks are in love with themselves. Amy, come on. You know that not one of them is modest. They are all serious flirts with 20/20 vision, and your scrubs do nothing to hide that sweet figure of yours, I asked. John, I didn't say they are modest. I said they are in love with themselves. Let's face it, they are all narcissistic jerks who love only themselves. So, since they are all obnoxious jerks and they only love themselves, they all in love with themselves. Ha ha, very funny. You just make sure you have nothing to do with any doctor egos. Don't worry, baby. The only heart I care about is mine, but I'll let you keep it in your chest until I want it again. And believe me, Buster, I'm going to want it again tonight. Your heart? When did my heart become your heart? About 4 months ago, when you said, I do, and there is nothing little about it. Amy giggled, grabbed the lunch I had packed for her, kissed me deeply, and then dashed out the door. I refilled my coffee cup and walked out onto our deck. The early morning air was still a bit damp and cool, but not uncomfortable. The pre-dawn moonlight cast random shadows over our sloping lawn, hiding the fact that I'll probably need to mow it today. Once settled comfortably onto my deck chair, I began to reflect on how much my life had improved in the last 2.5 years. I raised my nearly empty coffee cup to the few remaining visible stars in a toast, to the little moments in life that so dramatically change our fortunes. Nearly 3 years before, Saturday morning, I sat at the kitchen table reading the sports page and sipping my coffee. I could hear my 5-year-old twins thumping around upstairs. They were active boys, but not overly unruly. Like most dads, I had learned to tune out the noise they made. Unfortunately, their mother, Cindy, had no such filter system. John, will you go upstairs and deal with that before someone gets hurt or they break something again? I need to get dressed. I don't want to be late picking up Sue. We want to get to the antique show before all of the good stuff is gone. I didn't respond, but thought, yeah, sure, antique show. This was her latest excuse for ditching me and the boys on Saturday morning. Before this, it was book club, yoga classes, and, oh yeah, bird watching. She started this Saturday morning disappearing act about 18 months ago. It started off being about one Saturday per month, then she kept adding activities and staying away longer each time. Now she and her gal pal Sue are usually gone about 4 hours every Saturday. At first, I encouraged her to spend time with her friend, but this has gotten out of hand. I've complained about it, but she just blows up at me and rants about needing some me time. Truth is, I've never met Sue, and I'm beginning to think Cindy just made her up. I don't get the whole me time thing. She only works part-time, 3 days a week, while the boys are in kindergarten half of the day. Plus, Tommy's mom has my twins over every Wednesday afternoon for a play date. I can maybe understand Thursdays because they have school, and then Tommy is at our place until I get home from work. That still gives her plenty of me time. Little did I know what her me time really was. Cindy, relax. They're just boys. Boys are noisy, I answered. Darn it, John, now they're jumping on the bed. Will you please just go check on them? I've got to get going. And don't let them have anyone over tonight. I just don't want to deal with all that noise tonight. All right, I'm going up, I replied. Cindy is out the door before I get halfway up the steps. I get no goodbye, no love you, not even her usual screw you, just the sound of the door slamming. Which? Boys, you need to settle down. That's enough roughhousing. Hi, Dad, we're just playing around. Hey, Dad, can Tommy spend the night? Sorry, boys, not tonight. Your mom will be gone most of the day and will be tired when she gets home. So, she doesn't want any visitors here this evening. Dad, that's not fair, says Dean. Yeah, Dad, that's not fair. Mommy has visitors here, so why can't we? Says David. I don't care what... Wait, what did you say? The twins explained. The other day when they came home from school, Mr. Jimmy was sitting on the couch with Mommy. When they came into the room, he got up and walked to the door and Mommy said, "Thank you for visiting me today, Jimmy." Dad, Mr. Jimmy visits here a lot, so how come we can't have visitors? Tommy is our friend. We want him to stay over. I was stunned. Mr. Jimmy? That's what everyone called the older guy who lives just down the street from us. Cindy never once mentioned having him visit. Mr. Jimmy is a slick-looking guy who owns a couple of large used car lots. He apparently makes good money because he does a lot of local TV commercials. His ads say, "You can trust Mr. Jimmy." Well, I never trusted Mr. Jimmy, but obviously my wife did. Okay, well, I agree it may not be fair for Mommy to complain about having Tommy visit if she is having Mr. Jimmy visit. I will have to talk to your Mommy about that, but I'm sorry, boys. Maybe Tommy can stay over another time. Oh, by the way, boys, did you say you've seen Mr. Jimmy here other days too? Yeah, Dad. He's been here a bunch of times when we got home from school. We like Mr. Jimmy. He gives us gum. He always has gum in his pocket. Well, darn. Cindy's been entertaining that slime ball for a while now, and she sure as heck never mentioned it to me. God knows what she does with him before the boys get home. Shoot, what the heck do I do now? Boys, get dressed. I'm going to call Grandpa and see if we can visit with him while Mommy's gone. Hello. Dad, I've got a problem, I answered. Oh, hello, John. Let me guess, it's Cindy? He asked. How the heck could you know that? I questioned. John, I'm not stupid and I'm not blind. At your last barbecue, you had several of the neighbors there. You stayed busy taking care of the grill, I looked after the boys, and Cindy flirted with all the men. She even disappeared for a while with that slime ball used car guy. I overheard some of the wives complaining about Cindy's low-cut blouse and the way she was flaunting herself in front of all the husbands. I almost said something to you, but I didn't want to stir up any trouble. Damn, Dad. I guess I must be blind and stupid. I was completely unaware of what she was doing. Well, I think she's gone way beyond just flirting. She's had Mr. Jimmy in my house when the kids were at school, and they said he's been there several times when they got home. They said he's had lunch with them a bunch of times, too. What? So she's being unfaithful with that slime ball in your house? He asked. Hold on, Dad. The kid said he's been there for lunch, but I have no idea what they were doing before the kids got home. Of course, she's never once mentioned his frequent visits. So if she's keeping it a secret, I can only assume something is going on. Entertaining men at the house when you're gone? That's terrible. What are you going to do, son? He asked. Dad, can I drop the kids off at your place? I've got to get my ducks in a row before I confront her. Sure, John. I'm retired, remember? You can bring the boys over anytime you want. I dropped the boys off and headed over to my neighbor Larry's house. As expected, he was tinkering with some new equipment in his basement. Larry is a home-based computer guy who loves all kinds of gadgets. I remember at my barbecue, he hung around the grill and talked my ear off. Mostly, he was bragging about a home security system he had put together using old cell phones. I told him I loved the idea and wanted to set up some monitors to keep an eye on the boys. He took my cell phone and got out a couple of old phones he'd been given. He messed with them for a while, then said it was ready. He showed me how to access the old phone cameras with my newer iPhone and how to record videos. I now had a couple of spy cams. I took them home and hid one on a shelf in my bedroom and one in our front room. I knew I'd have to get through the weekend without alerting Cindy. I just hoped the twins wouldn't say anything about visitors. I knew Cindy had Tuesday morning and Wednesday afternoon to be unfaithful, so I hoped I wouldn't have to wait too long for my evidence. The cheating witch and the slime ball got together right after the kids left for school on Tuesday. The video recorded her betrayal and her saying she wished she'd never met me and never had my kids. They talked about how great it would be if she was single, like Mr. Jimmy, so they could travel and live a carefree life. Witch. Armed with my video and the boys' story, I met with a well-known divorce attorney, Sally Hawk. She explained that in most cases the wife gets primary custody of the kids, child support, the house until the kids leave home, and spousal support. Holy cow, she's the cheater! What do I get out of this? Well, you get to pay for everything. At least that's how it usually goes. But we have a bargaining chip. The video would cause a major scandal if it came out. At a very minimum, we should be able to leverage that to get joint custody. That would ensure you get your kids at least 50% of the time, maybe more if she's agreeable. Listen, John, I say we ask for full custody in the house. If she balks at that, offer her a bit more support money. Who knows? From the way she talked, she might be eager to get out of the mommy business and be single again. From the crap they were saying on the video, I think she might just be willing to take the money and go away. I'll let you handle the negotiations, Sally. I love my boys. I can always replace the money, so I don't care how much you have to give her. I want her gone, and I want the boys with me. I told Cindy I was taking Friday afternoon off, and Grandpa and I were taking the boys fishing. That was partly true. My dad was going fishing with the boys, I was not. I suspected Cindy would have Mr. Jimmy in my bed shortly after the kids and I left. I asked Sally for the process server's number and asked she have him standing by. I drove to my dad's house and dropped off the boys. My plan was to return and park just down the street from my house and wait for the feckless jerk to show up. But when I got back, there was a big blue pickup parked in my driveway. I parked on the street, called the process server, and asked him to be there in 10 minutes. I went up to the front door, eased it open, slipped inside, and left it ajar for the server. I could hear them upstairs. I assumed they were being unfaithful in my bed again. I slowly walked up the stairs, stopped in the boys' room and grabbed a small bat, then walked to my open bedroom door. I stopped dead in the doorway, mouth hanging open, as I watched some pimply-faced kid with Cindy in our bed. She was making inappropriate sounds, and the young man was clearly engaged with her in ways I never expected to see. It took me a moment to realize Cindy was saying something to the boy. "What the heck?" I yelled and stepped into the room. The kid was startled, jumping away from Cindy. His legs got tangled in the bedding and he fell to the floor. Cindy screamed and tried to scramble under the covers, but couldn't because they were wrapped around the kid's legs. "John! What in heaven's name are you doing here?" I couldn't help it. The sight of the dumbass punk trying to cover himself while trying to untangle himself, and Cindy yanking on the sheets trying to cover her cheating self was just too much. I burst out laughing. I laughed so hard I had tears leaking down my cheeks, and I had to hold on to the door to keep from falling down. "Are you all right, sir?" "Are you hurt?" the server asked as he helped me out of the room. I was finally able to catch my breath and told him to go ahead. I heard Cindy screaming at him as he said, "You've been served," and snapped a picture of her. I laughed all the way to my car. Turned out, the punk was Mr. Jimmy's 18-year-old son. He had secretly taped his dad with Cindy at his house and then threatened to send the tape to me unless Cindy was with him too. The day I caught them was the third time she had betrayed me with the kid. Mr. Jimmy didn't know about them, and Cindy confessed it all to me before agreeing to all my demands in exchange for my silence. I guess she really didn't want to lose her new meal ticket. I got primary custody of the kids, the house until the kids turned 18, and 70% of our savings. I only paid limited spousal support until she married Mr. Jimmy about 2 months after our divorce, much faster than anyone expected. But it got even worse for her. A month after their wedding, Mr. Jimmy discovered she was still secretly seeing his son. He kicked her out, filed for an annulment claiming fraud, and made sure everyone in town knew the sordid details. She lost her reputation and her new husband's money and ended up having to move to another state. I'm told she now works as a cashier at a convenience store. I spent my first year of freedom just trying to be the best dad I could be. I found a nice older lady to be a part-time nanny for the boys, and she has been great. The boys didn't seem too upset about Mommy moving out. They don't see her regularly, only every once in a great while when she takes the time to call and ask to see them. I stayed busy trying to be the best dad I could be for my boys. I tried to spend as much time with them as possible. One day I had the boys out biking around the neighborhood. Dean crashed his bike into a tree and cut his forehead. I ran to him and tried to assess his injuries. Dean was crying loudly and David was yelling for help. Several people gathered around to investigate what happened. A passing off-duty nurse saw the crowd around the fallen boy and stopped to offer help. She had a first aid kit and put a bandage on his head and told us to take him to the ER to be checked out. I carried Dean home, then drove us to the ER. The ER doctor examined him and he was fine, just a small cut and likely a bruise. As we were checking out, the nurse who had stopped to help us earlier in the day came up to us and introduced herself. Amy was dressed in scrubs and said she just wanted to check on Dean. We chatted for a bit and she asked for my number so she could check on Dean in a few days. Several days later, Amy called. We chatted for a while and I asked her over for dinner to thank her for her help and her concern. That dinner led to several dates, a proposal, and finally, a wedding. 4 months after the wedding, my dad called and offered to take the kids for the weekend. It so happened that Amy was scheduled to be off the entire weekend, so we planned to spend some quality time together. Of course, the 4:45 frantic phone call Amy got this morning put those plans on hold. I took another sip of my coffee. Damn. It was ice cold and I hate cold coffee. Well, I guess I'll have to get my lazy self up and go get another cup. As I struggled out of my deck chair, I couldn't help but think, yes, the last few years have brought many changes to my life and I couldn't be happier about it. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. I had it all figured out. 15 years of marriage had taught me exactly how to handle Ethan, how to mold him, shape him, keep him right where I wanted him. Some might call it emotional abuse. I called it management. Every evening followed the same script. Ethan would trudge through the door, still in his warehouse uniform, dirt under his fingernails and exhaustion in his eyes. I'd be waiting at the kitchen table, scrolling through my phone, not bothering to look up until he'd showered away the stink of manual labor. "How was your day?" he'd ask, settling in at the dinner table with that puppy dog hopefulness that never seemed to die, no matter how many times I killed it. "Productive," I'd reply, launching into detailed accounts of my office politics, my promotions, my successes. The real job. The one with benefits and a future. "Your day was what? Stacking boxes again?" I perfected the eye roll years ago. It was my signature move when Ethan tried to share something about his day. A small victory, a joke a coworker told, anything that might have briefly lifted his spirits. The eye roll said everything. "You're boring me. This doesn't matter. You don't matter." But my true masterpiece was the post-fight phone call. Whenever Ethan dared to stand up to me, I'd wait until he left the room, then immediately call his mother and sister. "I'm so worried about Ethan," I'd say, voice trembling with manufactured concern. "He's been so angry lately. I'm trying so hard, but nothing seems to help." By the time Ethan received their disappointed calls later that evening, I'd already painted myself as the victim and him as the monster. It was easy to feel superior. My paycheck kept our bills paid. My health insurance covered us both. My college degree hung on the wall while Ethan's community college certificate gathered dust in a drawer. When friends asked what he did, I'd answer for him. He's still trying to figure things out. The still implying perpetual failure. I made sure everyone knew who wore the pants. When Ethan attempted to fix the leaking sink, I hovered nearby, criticizing his technique until his hands shook. When his boss passed him over for promotion, I actually laughed, and said, "What did you expect?" At dinner parties, I'd mock his hobbies in front of our friends. "Ethan thinks he's going to build furniture someday. Isn't that cute? He can barely assemble an IKEA shelf." In my mind, I was doing him a favor, pushing him to be better, teaching him how the real world works. Someone had to toughen him up, right? The night everything changed started like any other. I'd had a terrible day at work. My own boss had criticized my quarterly report, and I needed someone to absorb my frustration. Ethan was the perfect target. As he sat across from me at dinner, I unleashed 15 years of practiced cruelty in one concentrated attack. "You know what your problem is, Ethan? You've never been man enough for anything. Not for a real career. Not for standing up to your boss. Not even for giving me children. Just a pathetic little boy playing at being a husband." I spat, venom dripping from every syllable. I expected tears. I expected him to retreat to the garage like he always did. I expected to feel that rush of control that came from breaking him down. Instead, I got silence. A long, calculating silence. And eyes I didn't recognize. Cold, distant, assessing. Then just one word. "Enough," he stated quietly, his voice firm and resolute. Something changed that night. Ethan's voice hadn't been raised. If anything, it had been quieter than usual, but that single word hung between us like a blade. For the next week, I watched him carefully, waiting for the usual pattern to reassert itself. The apologetic texts while I was at work, the peace offerings of my favorite takeout, the desperate attempts to restore harmony that had always given me such satisfaction. None came. Instead, Ethan became polite. Disturbingly polite. He'd respond to my morning criticisms with a simple, "You're probably right," he would concede with a slight nod. When I called his family after our next argument, he didn't even flinch, just watched me dial with an almost curious expression, as if observing an interesting insect. At first, I felt victorious. I bragged to my coworker Jen over lunch, "I've finally trained him properly. 15 years, but I've broken him down to where he just agrees with me now." "That doesn't sound healthy, Laura," she responded, shifting uncomfortably in her seat. "It's easier this way. He knows his place now." I dismissed her concern with a wave of my hand, but small things started bothering me. Ethan's phone, once left carelessly on countertops and coffee tables, now accompanied him everywhere, even to the bathroom. He began working late more often, claiming extra shifts at the warehouse. "They need the help," he explained, his tone neutral. "And we could use the extra money, right?" When I called his workplace to verify, something I'd done before to catch him in lies, his supervisor confirmed he was indeed there. But something in the supervisor's voice felt off, too rehearsed. Then came the tidiness. Ethan had never been particularly organized, but suddenly he was sorting paperwork in the home office, filing documents I'd never seen before. His laptop, always open and available for my impromptu checks, acquired a password. When I demanded to know why, he shrugged. Just basic digital security. They covered it in a seminar at work. You should do the same, actually, he suggested mildly, not looking up from his screen. I tried everything to provoke him back to our familiar dynamic. I accidentally knocked his favorite coffee mug off the counter, shattering it across the kitchen floor. He simply swept up the pieces and used a different cup. I called his mother while he sat reading in the living room, loudly detailing his recent emotional outbursts. A complete fabrication. He turned a page in his book and continued reading. At my company's summer barbecue, I flirted outrageously with Mark from accounting, laughing too loudly at his jokes, touching his arm, all while making sure Ethan could see from across the yard. Ethan chatted pleasantly with my boss's wife, occasionally glancing our way with that same unsettling calm, as if he found my behavior mildly amusing. The escalation came over a Thursday breakfast. I was scrolling through our joint bank account on my phone, planning weekend expenses, when Ethan casually mentioned, "By the way, I opened my own checking account yesterday, just for my personal expenses." "You did what?" I questioned, my coffee cup freezing halfway to my lips. "It seemed practical," he replied, calmly buttering his toast. "Separate accounts for separate needs. Makes budgeting easier." "We've never needed separate accounts in 15 years, I said, my voice sharp. Ethan looked up at me, his eyes clear and direct. "Just planning ahead, sweetheart." "You always said I should be more organized," he reminded me, his voice wrapping around the endearment like it was something foreign, something he was trying out for size. It made my skin crawl. For the first time in 15 years, I felt something I'd never expected to feel with Ethan. Fear. The separate bank account became my obsession. While Ethan was at work, I searched our home office, looking for statements, receipts, anything that might explain what he was planning. His desk drawers were meticulously organized, another new development, but contained nothing suspicious. Just office supplies and old warranties for appliances we'd bought years ago. Yet something felt off. Papers were slightly misaligned from how I'd left them. The angle of his desk chair had shifted. It was as if someone else had already searched the room, or as if he'd anticipated my search and prepared for it. Next, I tried his closet. Nothing hidden in shoes or pockets, but I noticed fewer clothes than I remembered. Had he been gradually removing items, or was my paranoia growing? I couldn't be sure. When Ethan came home that evening, I casually asked to borrow his phone to call mine, claiming I'd misplaced it. For 15 years, he'd handed it over without hesitation. "Sure," he offered, pulling it from his pocket. But when I pressed the home button, a password screen appeared. "Since when do you have a password on your phone?" I demanded, my suspicion obvious. "Since the security seminar I mentioned," he replied evenly. "Here, I'll unlock it for you." He tapped in a code and handed it back. The phone was pristine. No text messages except from his boss and a few co-workers about shift changes. No suspicious apps. No photos except a few bland snapshots of our backyard. It was so clean it seemed sanitized, as if he'd wiped away anything personal, anything real. My tactics escalated with my desperation. When Ethan came home late again the following Tuesday, I waited until he set his dinner plate down before sweeping it off the table. It shattered across the floor, food splashing against the cabinets. "Where were you, really?" I screamed, my face flushed with anger. "What pathetic little secret are you keeping from me?" Ethan didn't flinch. He looked at the broken plate, then at me, his expression mild. "I was at work, Laura, as I told you," he answered calmly. He stood up, retrieved the broom, and began sweeping up the mess. "You seem stressed lately. Is everything okay at your job?" he inquired, his voice unnervingly gentle. I called his mother on speakerphone right there in the kitchen. "Your son has been acting strange for weeks," I said, voice trembling with manufactured tears. "Coming home late, being secretive. I'm worried he might be having some kind of breakdown." Ethan leaned against the counter, watching me with that unnerving calm as his mother's voice filled the kitchen. "Have you considered—" "Laura," his mother said slowly, "that maybe Ethan is just tired?" she questioned, her tone lacking the concern I'd expected. The lack of alarm in her voice chilled me. This wasn't the script. She was supposed to be worried, to promise to talk to him, to side with me as she always had. After the call, Ethan simply said, "I'm going to shower," he announced quietly before leaving me standing alone in the kitchen. The turning point came 3 days later. Searching his jacket pockets while he was in the bathroom, I found a business card, Sarah, family law attorney. On the back, written in neat handwriting, was Thursday, 2 p.m. When Ethan emerged from the bathroom, I held up the card. "What is this?" I confronted him, waving the evidence in his face. He didn't look surprised or guilty. "I've been getting advice about our financial situation. Sarah specializes in domestic finances and legal protections," he explained matter-of-factly. He took the card from my fingers. "You should consider speaking with her, too. It's always good to understand your options," he suggested calmly. "Options for what?" I demanded, my voice rising to a shriek. "For anything that might come up," he clarified, his tone even. "Would you like her number? I can make an appointment for you." I stared at this stranger wearing my husband's face. The man who used to cry during our fights was gone. The man who begged me to stop calling his family had vanished. The man who apologized for everything, for existing, for breathing wrong, for disappointing me, had been replaced by someone I couldn't read, couldn't manipulate, couldn't control. This new Ethan watched me with careful eyes, documented every conversation, planned moves I couldn't anticipate, and I had no idea what he was building toward. Panicking, I called his sister that night, seeking allies in the family I'd always manipulated so easily. "Something's wrong with Ethan," I began, using the concerned wife voice that had worked reliably for years. "He's been seeing a lawyer behind my back, hiding money." "Laura," his sister interrupted, her voice cool and collected. "We've been waiting 15 years for Ethan to stand up to you. Whatever he's planning, he has our full support," she declared firmly. The phone nearly slipped from my fingers. "What are you talking about?" "I'm trying to help him," I protested, desperate to maintain control. "No, you're not," she stated with finality. "You never have been. Goodbye, Laura." She hung up, leaving me with the horrifying realization that not only had I lost control of Ethan, but his family, my longtime pawns, were now aligned against me. The morning of my downfall dawned bright and clear. I dressed with particular care in my power suit, the charcoal gray one that commanded respect in meetings, and drove to the office with renewed determination. If my home life was spiraling, at least I could control my professional domain. I marched straight to HR after the morning meeting, prepared to file a complaint about Dan from marketing creating a hostile work environment with his questioning of my quarterly projections. It was a tactic I'd used before when feeling threatened. Redirect. Attention to someone else's failings before anyone could notice. Mine, Brenda from HR, greeted me with an unusual expression. Not the customary sympathetic smile, but something more guarded. "Laura, what good timing. We were just about to call you in." "Please have a seat in the conference room," she directed, gesturing toward the open door. Inside waited not just Brenda, but my direct supervisor, Marcus, and the company's legal counsel, a woman I'd only seen at holiday parties. 3 stern faces and a manila folder centered precisely on the polished table. "What's this about?" I asked, maintaining my confident facade while my stomach twisted. Marcus slid the folder toward me. "We've received some concerning information, Laura. Before we discuss it, I'd like you to listen to something," he instructed, his voice professionally detached. He pressed a button on his phone, and suddenly my own voice filled the silent room. "I can't believe they promoted that idiot Dan over me. Just watch. I'll have him out by Christmas. All it takes is one sexual harassment claim and HR will run scared. They always do." My face burned as the recording continued, capturing a conversation I'd had with a coworker months ago. Then another clip played. "Ethan's such a loser. Can you believe I'm married to someone who works in a warehouse? God, it's embarrassing. I tell everyone he's in logistics management." And another. "The trick is to make them feel like they're the problem. Works on my husband, works on the team, works on Marcus. Men are so easy to manipulate when you know which buttons to push." As my worst moments played one after another, I realized with horror how I sounded to others. Calculating, cruel, manipulative. The same tactics I'd used at home were laid bare in my workplace voice, stripped of all justification. Marcus's expression remained professional but cold. These recordings were sent anonymously along with documentation of how your interpersonal approach has affected team performance and created potential liability for the company, he explained, sliding another document toward me. The legal counsel spoke next, her voice precise. We've verified the authenticity of these recordings. Combined with performance reviews and complaints that team members were previously afraid to file, we have sufficient cause for immediate termination, she informed me, her tone leaving no room for argument. My carefully constructed professional persona collapsed entirely. This is a misunderstanding. I was just venting. You can't possibly... I stammered, searching for any defense. Your final paycheck will be processed today. Company property, including your laptop and access card, must be surrendered immediately. Security will escort you to collect your personal items, Marcus concluded, already standing to indicate the meeting was over. 30 minutes later, I sat in my car in the parking lot. A small box of desk trinkets beside me, my career evaporated. My fingers shook as I turned the key in the ignition, rage building with each passing moment. I knew exactly who was responsible. I sped home, rehearsing the verbal assault I would unleash on Ethan. How dare he? How f***ing dare he destroy everything I'd built? He would pay for this. I would make sure of it. But when I pulled into our driveway, I froze. My belongings, clothes, books, personal items, sat neatly packed in boxes on the front porch. Through the living room window, I could see Ethan sitting at our kitchen table, papers spread before him. He wasn't alone. His brother stood behind him, arms crossed, and beside him sat a man I didn't recognize. I slammed through the front door. "What the hell is this?" I screamed, my voice echoing through the house. Ethan looked up calmly. "These are divorce papers, Laura. This is Michael, the process server," he introduced, gesturing to the stranger. "I thought it would be best to have them ready when you got home." "Home from where?" I sputtered, momentarily thrown off balance. "How did you know that you'd be fired today?" Ethan finished. I didn't know the exact timing, but it was inevitable once they received the evidence. He explained with that maddening calm. He slid a USB drive across the table. "This contains copies of everything they have. 15 years of conversations I recorded between us. Documentation of financial control tactics. Statements from neighbors who heard how you spoke to me. Testimonials from your co-workers about how you described our marriage." My legs weakened as I grasped the edge of the table. "You can't do this," I whispered, the strength draining from my voice. "It's already done," Ethan said quietly. "The divorce papers aren't a request, Laura. The judge has already reviewed the evidence. It's a notification." His brother stepped forward. "You should know that everything has been handled legally and ethically. All recordings were made with single-party consent, which is legal in this state. All witnesses provided statements voluntarily," he clarified, his tone professional but with an undercurrent of satisfaction. I lunged for my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone who might help me reclaim control of this nightmare. Ethan slid my phone across the table toward me, a sad smile crossing his face. "Your parents already know." "Laura, I thought they should hear it from you first," he revealed, pushing the phone closer to my trembling hand. My fingers trembled as I picked up my phone. Ethan had already queued up my parents' contact, his final cruelty being this semblance of choice, as if I were still making decisions rather than following his carefully orchestrated script. I pressed the speakerphone button, clinging to one last hope that my parents would rally to my defense as they always had, convinced of their daughter's perfection regardless of evidence. "Laura," my father's voice came through, cold and flat in a way I'd never heard directed at me. "We've been expecting your call. Dad, you don't understand. Ethan has lost his mind. He's making up lies. He's turned everyone against me," I pleaded, desperation clear in my voice. "Stop it!" My mother's voice cut through mine, sharp as a blade. "We've heard the recordings, Laura. We've heard how you speak to your husband, how you've treated him for 15 years. We raised you better than this," my father continued, shame evident in every syllable. "We're embarrassed by who you've become." "But..." I tried again, desperation clawing at my throat. "No," my mother interrupted firmly. "We support Ethan's decision completely. Don't contact us again until you've gotten professional help and taken responsibility for your actions." The call disconnected, leaving me standing in what was once my kitchen, surrounded by men who watched me with a mixture of pity and resolution. The reality crashed down around me. Ethan hadn't just left me. He'd systematically dismantled every support system I'd taken for granted. My job, my family, our friends who'd heard the recordings, our social circle who now saw me clearly for what I was. Why? I whispered, the fight draining out of me. Why didn't you just leave? Ethan considered me for a long moment. Because leaving wouldn't have been enough. You would have painted yourself as the victim. You would have turned everyone against me, just like you always did. You would have taken everything in the divorce just like you threatened to do so many times, he explained, his voice calm but resolute. He gathered the papers, his movements deliberate and measured. 3 years ago, I started therapy in secret. My therapist helped me recognize the abuse pattern. She taught me to document everything, to protect myself legally and financially. It wasn't about revenge, Laura. It was about survival. This house, he continued, gesturing around us, was never in your name. I made sure of that when we refinanced last year. Remember how I handled all the paperwork while you were too busy? The car you've been driving belongs to a company I started 2 years ago. The joint accounts have been emptied legally with documentation of your financial abuse as justification. The process server handed me the final papers. My hands were numb as I accepted them. You taught me that power comes from preparation, Laura, Ethan said quietly. You were just teaching the wrong person. He stood, signaling the end of our final conversation. You spent 15 years trying to make me feel small. Now you get to see what small actually looks like, he concluded, his words hanging in the air between us. They watched in silence as I walked woodenly to the front door. Through the window I could see more cars pulling into the driveway. Ethan's mother, his sister, friends I'd alienated over the years. They carried casserole dishes and bottles of wine, a celebration of freedom. As I loaded the last box into my car, I heard laughter from inside, warm, genuine, relieved. The sound of people who no longer had to walk on eggshells. The sound of my husband, ex-husband, finally surrounded by people who actually cared about him. You spent 15 years trying to make me feel small, he'd said. Looking at the pitiful collection of boxes that represented my life, I finally understood what he meant. 6 months after Ethan's masterfully executed departure from my life, I live in a single room above Martelli's convenience store. The sign buzzes all night, casting green neon shadows across my rented bed. My grand career trajectory, my social standing, my carefully curated image, all reduced to survival mode in a town too small to forget what I've done. Each morning, I check my email for responses to job applications. Each morning, I delete the polite rejections. Background checks are thorough these days, and word travels quickly in professional circles. One HR manager was blunt enough to tell me, "We heard the recordings, Ms. Winters. We can't risk having someone like you on our team. Someone like you." 3 words that follow me everywhere. Apartment applications meet the same fate. Landlords require references, previous addresses, employment verification. My name has become toxic. My reputation a warning label. I've learned my lesson, I tell Dr. Henry during our weekly court-mandated therapy sessions. I've suffered enough. She regards me with that penetrating stare therapists perfect in graduate school. Have you actually learned, Laura? Or are you just suffering the consequences and calling it growth? She challenges, seeing through my self-pity. I have no answer that doesn't sound like the victim narrative she's been challenging for months. Meanwhile, Ethan's life continues its upward trajectory. I shouldn't know this. Stalking social media for glimpses of his new reality only prolongs my pain, but I can't help myself. His promotion at work came through. The small craftsman house he bought has a workshop where he's finally building that furniture I mocked for so many years. His Instagram shows him hiking with a woman whose smile reaches her eyes when she looks at him. His family, once my puppets in the game of control, post proud updates about him. His sister captioned a recent photo, "So proud of the strength and patience it took to rebuild your life on your terms." 15 heart emojis followed, each one a dagger to my chest. The man I thought was weak had simply been choosing his battles, planning, documenting, waiting for the perfect moment to execute a strategy so complete that I'm still discovering new dimensions of its impact. The most painful realizations come in the quiet moments of isolation. When the convenience store closes and the only sounds are my own thoughts, I understand with perfect clarity I created this situation. The loneliness, the rejection, the whispers that follow me down the street. I got exactly what I gave, and the man I underestimated made sure I'd never forget it. Some nights I dream I'm back in our kitchen, about to unleash that final verbal assault that pushed him over the edge. In the dream, I stop myself. I see the damage I'm about to cause, to him, to us, ultimately to myself. I choose different words, a different path. But then I wake up in my single room, the neon sign buzzing outside my window, and remember that some choices can't be unmade. Some lessons come too late. The woman who once held all the power is now the cautionary tale others whisper about. And somewhere across town, in a house with a workshop and a woman who treats him with respect, Ethan is finally free. And so, we've reached the end of today's story. Was it what you expected, or did it take a twist you didn't see coming? I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Share them in the comments below, and let's get a conversation going. If this story kept you hooked, make sure to hit that like button. And if you're new here or just haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to join our community. I bring you fresh, captivating stories every day, so click that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss out. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.